Thank you so much, Senator, for your kind introduction. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. Really so wonderful to have so many countries represented here, governments, parliamentarians, our civil society colleagues. And I want to just take a quick moment to thank our co-sponsors at the Inter-Parliamentary Union, Equality Now, UNHCR, and UN Women. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to just kind of provide a global overview and a snapshot of this issue. We'll have sessions over the course of the next 2 days that will go into more detail about some of the things that we'll discuss. So this is kind of meant to provide that kind of bird's eye view, so then we can go in a bit deeper with colleagues. First, importantly, let's see if my slide is, there we go. Okay, it is working. Wonderful. So I want to start. It was mentioned earlier today that this morning in the welcome remarks that there are over 40 countries that have some form of gender discrimination in their nationality laws. This includes countries that do not uphold women's right to pass citizenship to a non-citizen spouse on an equal basis with men. And I say non-citizen because that spouse might be a foreigner. He might be a stateless man residing within the country. Some of those discriminatory provisions might relate to the ability of a naturalized citizen to pass citizenship to their minor children, et cetera. There are, as we heard earlier this morning, 24 countries globally that do not uphold women's right to equally confer citizenship on their children on an equal basis with men. Now, there's a little tiny asterisk up there because, as some colleagues in the room know, and I'm very excited to share, I'm hoping in the next few weeks that I will not be using the word 24 anymore. We actually had the government of Malaysia, the Senate, the upper house of parliament, just endorsed a constitutional amendment bill that was passed by the lower house in October that removes gender discrimination for Malaysian women with their ability to confer citizenship on their children on an equal basis with men. It still needs to be endorsed by the Council of Rulers, but I am told we expect this to go through, and we look forward to celebrating very much with, yes. Thank you. Important to take a moment, and I'm really excited. You'll hear from one of the amazing impacted mothers that helped to lead this reform campaign. This man-made discrimination once and for all. And the good news is it's not only a development that will result in greater equality for citizens, but it's actually in countries' best interests. And we'll hear about that over the course of the next couple days as well. Um, I believe you'll see there's a bunch of publications that are in the front. One of those is the UN Refugee Agency's background note on gender discrimination, gender equality, and statelessness. And so that also includes a little snapshot of the countries where women lack the equal right to confer citizenship on their children and the various forms of discrimination that takes. In some instances, women have no right to pass citizenship to their child, no matter if the child would be stateless, no matter if the child's father is stateless. In some countries, the law might open up a bit of an opportunity for the woman to confer citizenship in very rare circumstances at the discretion of the government. And what we find is where this discretion is there, there is an intersection with various forms of discrimination. So where there is, where a woman must apply for her child to acquire to grant citizenship to her child. We often find this intersecting with discrimination against minority groups, religious minorities, ethnic minorities. So really there's this intersecting discrimination that is very important to keep in mind. And this is unsurprising because we know that various forms of discrimination are interlinked. Um, One of the very important things to keep in mind, I think, when we're thinking about this issue, you may have seen in the list of countries that was up previously, no particular region, you don't find these laws in one region. You see them in regions around the world. In the countries that were listed up there, there's no particular religion that is referenced. And this is a very important thing for us to keep in mind. Gender discrimination and nationality laws is not rooted in any particular religion. It's not rooted in any particular local culture or tradition. In fact, this has been the norm globally. If you go back just a few decades, you will find that most countries around the world did not uphold women's right to pass citizenship to their children, to their spouse on an equal basis with men. And when we think about the time that these laws were first, drafted at a time when maybe women did not have the right to vote, to own property, to have certain jobs, right? And so what we see, and again, this is something that I think is really important for us to think about, is there's actually a very strong colonial legacy with gender discrimination and nationality laws. What you find is that many of the countries that have yet to take these steps to remove this discrimination, many are former colonies that at the time of independence based their nationality law on the discriminatory nationality law that was the norm globally. You had it in the UK, you had it in France, you had it in Belgium, you had it in the United States. And it's only over the past several decades that most countries around the world have been enacting these reforms to uphold gender equality. So, one of the things that campaigners have referenced in countries where these reforms have taken place, for example, in Algeria and Tunisia, they said, we got rid of the colonial rulers. We got rid of this terrible oppressive system. And yet we still have on the books these laws that are holding our own citizens back, that are hurting our country. And when you look at the fact that today, 90% of countries uphold citizens' equal right to pass citizenship to their children. 75%, three-quarters of countries globally, uphold gender equality comprehensively in their nationality laws. So this indicates that these reforms are not something that should be feared, but should be embraced because these countries undertook these reforms understanding that they were in their best interest and upholding the constitutional principles of non-discrimination and equal citizenship. Um, you're going to be hearing, and you heard a little bit from Deep DG earlier this morning, and you'll be hearing across our conversations over the next 2 days, the ways in which gender discrimination and nationality laws is linked with wide-ranging human rights violations and hardships. Um, the top thing on the list there says threatened family unity, and one of the sad kind of ironies is that oftentimes we might hear from some people that, well, these laws where you can only get nationality from one of the parents, it helps to keep the family together. What we actually know is that gender discrimination and nationality laws contributes to family separation, with obstacles to for fathers, for example, getting residency permits and work permits to be able to be there and help raise children. You have, in some instances, children that have to apply for residency permits to live in the country that's the only country that they ever knew. And then being forced at 18, if they can't get a work sponsor, to have to leave the country, to not be able to reside with their grandparents, with their cousins, with their aunts and uncles. Um, Very importantly, and when we're thinking about not only the human rights issues, but the ways in which this is very linked with countries' national development and their best interests, you have impacted children that don't have nationality in the country in which they're living, They don't have equal access to education. They don't have equal access to healthcare, to scholarships. Oftentimes, there are different professions that individuals are unable to access because they don't have nationality in the country that they consider their homeland. And what does this mean? This means that that those countries are missing out on the full contributions of those children of their female citizens. I don't want to. I'm calling out Deepti because she has two really extraordinary daughters that happen to be brilliant like their mother. And I hope you don't mind me citing this example. Deepti's eldest was at the top of her class. She wanted to become a doctor, and she would have made a fine doctor in Nepal. But because she didn't have citizenship, she was unable to sit for those exams. Happily, now she has been able to get citizenship through a process going through the court. And she is a lawyer, a Fulbright scholar right now at American University, and is going to be contributing so much to her homeland. And we want to have an environment where all of those children have the ability and the right to equally contribute to their homeland. We also know that gender discrimination and nationality laws is linked with various forms of exploitation and even gender-based violence. So not only do those without identity documents, without access to citizenship in their country, face exploitation in the workplace, so oftentimes have to find work in the informal sector because of their lack of status. That opens them up to situations where it's harder for them to access justice if they confront a situation of abuse or harassment at work. But it's also these discriminatory laws are also very much linked with various forms of gender-based violence. Tragically, I know families where, for example, a mother who was raising her family in actually in Europe. It was a mother from Malaysia who was facing a situation of abuse, and during COVID, she wanted to get back to her home country with her child, but because her child lacked citizenship and there were the bans on foreigners entering the country during COVID, she was unable to get out of that situation. And we see tragic examples like this in every context where where these laws persist. We also know that girls that do not have citizenship in their country of residence face an increased risk of child early and forced marriage, with sometimes families seeing early marriage as a way of securing citizenship through marriage for those girls who can't get access to citizenship because of the discriminatory nationality laws. We know that impacted children and spouses can lack equal access to property rights to acquire a family inheritance. And as we talked about earlier in the opening remarks, the links with statelessness, of course. So this is one of just a few root causes of statelessness. Um, We'll have in the next session more attention to the links with international law, but just to note here that there are a number of international conventions that countries have in their sovereignty ascribed themselves to. The Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Statelessness Conventions. These conventions uphold the principle of the right of everyone to acquire a nationality and non-discrimination on the basis of sex. So we'll hear more about that in the next session. But of course, because this issue is so intimately linked with international law, this is something that we see frequently raised by UN human rights treaty bodies and other special procedures, such as the special rapporteur focused on poverty, on racism. Remember, I mentioned that there are these links with discrimination against minority groups where there is discretion in the law as opposed to the right to confer nationality. We'll hear later on today about the many links with sustainable development and the fact that 9 of the 17 sustainable development goals cannot be realized in the absence of gender equal nationality laws. Coming to the close here, I just wanted to end with some happy news. There have been a number of developments at the national, regional, and global level that is contributing to momentum to end gender discrimination in nationality laws once and for all. There are a number of regional declarations that have been established in a number of different regions in West Africa, in the League of Arab States member states, in Southern Africa, in other regions around the world where stateless conventions have been endorsed by governments in those regional intergovernmental bodies, where the governments have set as a goal to end gender discrimination in nationality laws as one of the means to combating statelessness. We've also seen here in Geneva, there have been a number of Human Rights Council resolutions in 2012, in 2016, and also just last year, where the Human Rights Council has devoted attention to this issue and is encouraging governments to take action to realize reforms. I wanted to draw attention here because it is one of the most recent regional declarations, the Arab Declaration on Belonging and Legal Identity, which, like these other regional declarations that I mentioned, call on all Arab League members to eliminate gender discrimination in their nationality laws and remove reservations to CEDAW Article 9. Um, since 2000, we have had 16 countries, and again, I have that little asterisk there because I'm waiting to just put Malaysia firmly up on that list, that have enacted reforms to uphold women's equal right to pass citizenship to their children. There are a number of other countries, many more countries in that time period that have enacted partial reforms, expanding gender equality and nationality law, and countries that have enacted reforms to finally remove all gender discrimination from their nationality law, such as Lesotho, Benin, and Niger, that enacted reforms in this time period to uphold women's equal right to confer citizenship on their spouse. So I just want to close this kind of global overview conversation with the fact that we know that this problem that doesn't need to exist, can be resolved with the political will. Unlike most of the main problems facing humanity and our global community today, some that require significant amount of financial resources to address, some that we don't have the answer to yet, and we need to do more to research the problem, to figure out how to solve it. This is not one of those issues. It does not take great financial resources. It doesn't require more studies. All it requires is the political will. And oftentimes, all we're talking about here is the addition of two words to a nationality law. So where it says father, it can say and mother. Where it says wife, it can say husband, or you can just use the term citizen. Citizens have the right to pass citizenship to their children under this circumstance. Citizens have the right to pass citizenship to a spouse under these circumstances. I'm really gratified that we have this time together over the next 2 days, and that we have so many powerful, influential leaders here with us, because I know that you can, after this summit, go back and help to address this issue and make a massive transformation in the lives of so many impacted families and help support sustainable development at home. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm really looking forward to our conversations over the next 2 days.